I love mornings like this, cold and calm, filled with birdsong and clear winter light. My Land Rover's trail name is the English Bird, and this morning I'm loading her up with what we'll need for the day. Wood, iron, instruments. Everything simple, everything with purpose. Roads like these don't really need narration. I've driven this one hundreds of times. It's one of the main back roads on the island. If you follow it south, it connects with Highway 20 and carries you across Deception Pass Bridge toward Whidbey Island. I'm not going that far today. My destination is Bowman Bay, part of Deception Pass State Park. Like a river, this road slowly winds its way down to the sea, and that's where today's Cast Iron Cookout will take place. These shelters, built from stone and heavy timber, were constructed in the 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps. Young men working with hand tools, using local materials, building structures meant to last. Nearly a century later, they're still doing exactly what they were designed for, giving people a place to gather. We start the fire early, not to rush things, but because cast iron rewards patience. Three stoves come up to temperature slowly. Iron warming iron. There's no shortcut here. You let the fire do the work and adjust as the day unfolds. It was a cold day, but the sun stayed with us. Wool jackets, knit caps, and maybe a dram of whiskey to warm the spirit. Smoke clings to jackets and stories. This place was shaped for gathering, built so people could linger. This is how winter used to begin, with food, with fire, and with people standing close enough to feel both. As the sun drops low, the iron stays warm. One of the reasons it's been trusted for generations. Eventually, though, the coals burn down, and our friends drift off into the fading light. The shelter remains quiet again, waiting for the next fire. Okay, so I'm going to give you a rundown of the Cascadia Ember Oysters, this year's version of it anyways. So we actually just had our cast iron cookout yesterday, so I've got some leftovers. So I'm just going to use up the rest of my ingredients, but if you want a more exact recipe, come to thequiltedhiker.com and join the collective, and I'll have the recipe posted there with a bunch of other recipes. So what I did early, because I arrived at the park around 9 a.m. to claim the lodge that we set up in, and got the fire going, got the coals going. And what I like to do, just like the energy bars, is do a little test batch. So I actually put the cast iron kind of into the coals, just a third of it, and just did a test batch of 4 oysters with the ingredients, just to make sure I didn't want to tweak it before I did the full pan. And so I highly encourage you to do that as well. I'll always try to encourage you to do that, whether it's with the energy bars or any recipe, is to make it your own. So yeah, I'm just going to give you kind of a rundown. What I'm using is just the easy. I got these at Costco. These are extra smalls. Now, if you get different sizes, if you're using the larger sizes, the smalls or mediums or large, you might just use one per mold. I'm gonna go big because I want to use up the rest of these ingredients. Yesterday I was using 2 for the most part. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get going here. I'm gonna start by getting these oysters in the pan. So you're getting the very unkempt version of Jameson today. I didn't shower. I put on the same clothes I had yesterday for the Cast Iron Cookout because they were properly infused by oyster fumes already. So, but for the most part, you're generally going to be getting that version of me going forward. This is not a Martha Stewart cooking show. So yeah, I mean, if I was doing this like yesterday, I'd probably go with this amount per mold, but because I want to use up the ingredients, I'm going to go ahead and put some more in here. All right. So next up, I'm going to use this walnut oil. This is infused with Douglas spruce tips, dried. Time out, real quick. I'm using Douglas fir in this recipe. I said Douglas spruce. It sometimes has that nickname, Douglas spruce. That is probably when I'm getting a Christmas tree or something. That's probably why that stuck in my head. Also known as Oregon pine sometimes. So it's confusing. It's not a pine. It's not a spruce. Technically, I don't think it's even a fir tree. You could use spruce tips in this recipe by all means. It might be a little bit mellower and very tasteful. I've had spruce tips in beer before this last year on Vancouver Island. So if you watch the Nootka Island episode, there should be a beer cameo in there towards the end. Yeah, I guess I'll also say when you're sizing up a tree, just make sure it's not a yew tree because that might be poisonous for you. I just wanted to preemptively stop the comments that would surely ensue if I did not do this public announcement. So carry on. That I just minced up even more so they're a little more powdery. And this is going to give the walnut oil gives a nice nutty umami flavor, and the spruce tips give the element of forest to this dish. When I was doing a test batch, I just put a few drops on and then realized I like it I like to notice it. So next up, I'm going to scoot this a little bit closer. This is actually more toasted than it needed to be. I had this on the stove and walked off. But I'm just going to put a mixture of butter, shallots, and garlic over the top here. So here I'm just going to use a Gruyere cheese. This is from Switzerland, so this is their version of a Swiss. Very old recipe. Again, I'm just trying to use up what I had. So I'm being a little more liberal right now. All right. Next I'm going to put on some spinach leaves. I'll just rip these up and so they're a little bit more shredded. Do this right when I'm about to put them in so it's not all bruised. Okay, next would be the pancetta. I toast this ahead of time, and the oil, the grease that came out of it, I used to fry up the shiitakes, which are going in next. All right, so next is the mentioned shiitakes. All right. And last up is, gosh, I might space on the name of this one. This is a Pescano Romano. It's basically a sheep cheese. It's one of those age-old protected recipes the Romans were quite fond of. So it's been around a while. But this has a little more depth than your typical Parmesan cheese that you're more than welcome to use as a substitute. All right. And just to let you know, like one of these containers, if you get, would probably do a couple dishes if you're just doing 2 per, because if you're going with extra smalls, it says 40 per container, so be more than enough to do 24, doing 2 of these. So I'm going to go ahead and get this on the fire and toasting over here. So I'm just going to top it with some fresh tarragon and watercress out of our pond. But those will go on after because I want to have a little peppery, fresh finish to this. So I'm going to go ahead and get this on the fire and we'll take it from there. All right, so as these cook, I'm just going to go ahead and toast the top with the torch. Yesterday at the cookout, I was actually just using a tin pan over the top and just holding it with a mitted hand. And it actually worked pretty good. So if you don't have one of these culinary torches, just hold a little tray over the top and try to get the flame around the side. This was a lot easier yesterday with the big fire we had going out at the lodge. Okay, so these are nice and bubbly. I'm just gonna top them with a little fresh watercress here. That's gonna give it a nice peppery finish. And some fresh tarragon. Now, if you end up doing this recipe and you have a variation of your own, please let me know what you did. So I'd be curious. This recipe, of course, is based off of the old Rockefeller, but I'm not a huge fan of panko and breading like that. I wanted to just have a dish that kind of highlighted the elements of Cascadia, the oysters, the forest, the umami, and the pancetta and the mushrooms. So there you have it, the Cascadia Ember Oysters. Thanks for being here.